So the interesting thing about this event, and I love to have Whole Foods, and there's a number of purpose-driven retailers here. So Misfits Market's here, Thrive is here. The reality is, though, they're few and far between. So there's a lot more Kroger's and Hy-Vee's than there are purpose-driven, and they're having to tack it on. So the things that you can learn from a Whole Foods doesn't mean you're going to walk away and apply everything, because you can't, to be quite frank, nor should you necessarily. But what we tell retailers when I'm talking to them specifically about speaking is, you're all on a different journey. And it's not for me to judge where you should be in your journey. It's not for me to tell any retailer that they should be where Whole Foods is, because they're not Whole Foods. But it is for us to say, how can we help you move more quickly? How can we help you affect change and be smarter and better stewards of what we're doing? So what we have done this year, and we field research 4 or 5 times a year, is field a set of research to the industry about the industry and its sentiment about private brands. We call it the State of Green 2023 Retailer-Owned Brand Sustainability Industry Survey. We worked with our research partner Voci and fielded it August 9th through the 21st, so it's very recent, right? We had 82 folks answer the survey, and they could be everything from retailers to manufacturers to agencies to software. Basically, if you're in the industry, you can answer it. We'll look at that a little bit more in a minute. But this is the first one of this type. So this is really designed to build a baseline. And I don't think there's a lot of surprising things here, but it'll answer some of your questions, or it will echo the questions, right? So you'll see in your pouch question coming. So who did we talk to? Well, you see the vast majority of them, or about a quarter of them, were 25% were directors, but we still had a good chunk of presidents and CEOs at 14%. So it's a nice mix across the piece. It's the people who are setting the strategy, and then a whole bunch of people who are actually doing it. And as we all know in companies, sometimes those people don't agree. We looked at different company types. So you'll see here, of course, there's a lot of private brand manufacturers in the world, so we talked to a lot of them. Going up, and retailers had a good chunk. Now, when we field research, it crosses all categories and all channels, so this isn't just a grocery conversation. I spent 5 years at Lowe's. I know lots of home improvement manufacturers, so there are some of those included here. Basically, if you were in the retail business, we're talking to you because although grocery is an interesting conversation, it's not the only conversation. We looked at their level of responsibility for private brand, retailer-owned brand, and you see kind of split out good. Direct responsibility, they were fully in charge, 18.3%, in a support role, 38.3%, and then shared in the middle there. As far as retail channels, you see it's a lot, but grocery wins. And grocery winning is no surprise, honestly, because there's just a lot more grocers out there and a lot more manufacturers. Now, if you were a manufacturer and manufactured for multiple channels, you could answer this multiple times. So it's not like it's a straight up clean number there. And then we asked the question, who is responsible for sustainability? So who do you think should be? By and large, so 39 of the respondents said retailers and manufacturers should share the responsibility. Not a huge surprise. Retailers cannot do it by themselves. Manufacturers cannot do it by themselves. Not a big deal. 3 of them said consultants should be. All 3, I would guess, are also consultants, but who knows? So it's blind research. Splitting it up even further, so we said in your company, and it could be the manufacturer or the retailer, it doesn't matter what kind of company it is, who's actually responsibility for it. So you'll see the lighter green down here says there's actually a sustainability team that's responsible for it, 28%. 33% said there's a private brand team and a corporate sustainability team, and we share responsibility. So it kind of fits in. So just like Tom and Caitlin up here, they're working together to do it. We asked about the importance of sustainability. So how important is sustainability in your retailer-owned brand strategy? So again, you would assume it's going to be different at Whole Foods versus, I don't know, Hy-Vee. So 26.7% said extremely important. 1.7% said not important at all. Not sure, probably a manufacturer if I had to guess. But on average, you were looking there, if you take the extremely important and very important, 65% said it had a higher level of importance. As far as the sustainability strategy, so this goes to the question of how are your efforts or initiatives, how are they planned, how are they executed? So if you look at the far left, that would be focused and effective. The far right would be non-existent, and then we have random and accidental. So you see 46.7% say their efforts are focused and effective. 23.3% said they're random, which means I might find something, maybe a manufacturer presents something to me. It just kind of depends. I'm not really looking for it, but it might happen. And then 13.3% said it's completely accidental, which means in that case, maybe they bought some coffee and it just happened to have been fair trade, but they didn't really know it was. How effective then is it? 15% said extremely. Moderately effective, which is the bulk, is 53.3%, and 16.7% at somewhat ineffective, and 8.3% at very ineffective. So there's still, you can see that kind of middle of the road, we're doing okay, but not really, and you'll see that kind of play out. What has been the impact of the economy on your sustainability initiatives? Right, so that kind of goes to that pricing question. Will people pay extra in this economy? Maybe, maybe not. So you see 38.3% said they have maintained the same pace of their sustainability programs in this economy. They haven't slowed things down, they haven't speeded things up. And then the bulk of the numbers kind of fall below that. So we're just kind of sitting there, waiting for the economy to turn, hoping things are going to get better. And you get to 6.7% said they've dramatically accelerated. Probably Whole Foods, Thrive, and Misfits, if I had to guess, but yeah. Public goals. So when I'm out looking for speakers for this, generally the easiest place to find a speaker is with a retailer or a manufacturer who has publicly stated goals. You know, Whole Foods has published a giant document about what they do, so it should be a little easier for them to speak, right? But so have they actually done that? So do you have publicly stated goals with a deadline for recyclable, reusable, or compostable packaging? 26% said yes, 42% said no, 12% said I don't know. When we look at those goals, how effective are your current retailer brand sustainability initiative goals? So you look at sustainable products versus sustainable packaging. So those are really the two pillars that we talk about here, sustainable products and sustainable packaging. Those are typically the things that retail executives can impact. It's not windmills or trucking those are also important, and there are other conferences for those, but typically a Tom or a Wanik at Kroger can impact these things. So you see there's a huge number there, 25% to 50%, that is on product and packaging. And it's split out pretty evenly. It's not a surprise. 33.8% was the average product goal, and 41.3% was the average packaging goal. So how much are we trying to shift? Those are pretty exciting goals. The reality of the packaged goods industry in general is perfection means we no longer exist, so we don't really want that anyway, right? We still have to sell food. We still have to sell curtains and wood or whatever we're selling, so it's important. We then said, if you were to evaluate your organization in each of the following areas, which grades would you assign in each of the following areas, such that we could begin to give the organization, the entire organization, not just private brand, a grade. So product sustainability, a B-, consumer insights and trends, a C+, packaging sustainability, a C+, overall organizational sustainable focus, a C+, sustainability initiatives, effectiveness, a C, and marketing or communications being specifically about sustainability, a C. Honestly, I'm surprised it gets a C. That's usually the hardest thing. People are so terrified of greenwashing, they don't want to talk about it. The challenge of that is they also then don't get credit, and their customers don't know what they're doing. So in general, you see a C here. Does this surprise anybody? Would anybody give it a higher grade? No. So in looking at the tactics to advance sustainability, so we asked which steps or tactics are most important to pursue to advance sustainable practices in retailer-owned brands. You look there, number one was collaboration. Kind of goes back to the we have to work together thing, right? Number two was insights and trends. So tell me more about where I should be doing it and reaffirm to me that consumers actually care, because we're all a little skeptical that they do. That one's a little bit cowardly if you ask me, but okay. 20.7% said attitudes and adjusting strategies for changing consumer attitudes and choices related to sustainable products. Again, that's the will consumers spend around it. Now, I can tell you Aldi has one heck of a fair trade coffee program, wherever the fair trade guy is, Jay. So seems to be working okay. And then marketing again. So when we looked at the next piece, we said if there was one thing you could change, just one, what would it be? And then these are in rank order. So number one would be improve consumer education, importance of sustainability. So get our shoppers to understand this matters. Number two was get involved with retailer sustainability goals. And that was both internally and externally. So if you're a manufacturer, know the goals, get involved with them. If you're that supporting person at a retailer, know them as well, because a lot of times, as we saw in the numbers earlier, they don't. Number three, complete a sustainability review on all private brand products and packaging. Again, that's let's actually take this piece by piece and say, is there something that we can do about this product? You know, for some of these retailers that have 10, 20,000 SKUs, it's a huge task. But in the huge task, you might find baby steps. So Tesco just launched and went to clear caps on their milk. The clear cap is now recyclable. The colored cap was not recyclable. Oh no, consumers will never do it. They want the red cap. Not really, they don't care. Label's still red. But if they didn't do a SKU by SKU, a category by category analysis and said, can we make it better? You won't find it. And number four, plastic reduction, use more sustainable products and packaging. So there's plenty of argument over plastic. I don't think it ever goes away, and we need it to maintain food safety, but we could certainly reduce it, and we could certainly be smarter at it. Number five, more internal awareness on necessity of sustainability, educate everyone. So that's internally. That's making sure when the sustainability lead goes to the merchant and says, have you asked about this in your procurement process? They go, am I supposed to? Okay. So yes, educate customers, but it's also educate us. Important. So third-party certifications. This one's fun. So we had the list of the top 30 certifications in North America and said, how important is each one of these to retailer-owned brand sustainability? So Fair Trade will want to take it. Where'd Jay go? Jay left us now. Jay was getting his moment in the sun. 92% said Fair Trade certified was important. Okay, and Jay, and I'll do this again for you. We asked participants about third-party certifications. So we said, how important is each one to retailer-owned brand sustainability? Fair Trade, 92% said it was important, right? So they ranked them all. Non-GMO, sustainable forestry, a lot of these that Tom had shown. I don't think it's very surprising. Now you get down to these last couple, I think honestly it's an awareness conversation, and it's not as easily explained to people. So 1% for the planet, I think if we did top of mind awareness, a lot of people just wouldn't know it. Doesn't surprise. And it's not a tangible thing like Fair Trade says, we're taking care of the farmers, we're doing X, Y, Z. Just, it's a little bit more untangible. So the top 5 sustainability products. Manufacturers globally are increasingly prioritizing sustainability as one of the key focus areas for their investments in the next 12 months, what will your investments be? So number one would be on sustainable materials. This kind of gets to your pouch conversation. So you'll see this piece again is a lot of the retailers specifically are worried that if they all did this at once, the materials would simply not exist, right? You couldn't get enough, whatever it was. So if Walmart and Kroger both pulled the lever today, would there be anything left for anybody else? And that's a legitimate concern. Transparency, number two. Right, so are we communicating both internally and externally where these products are from? What are they made of? How are they packaged? What is the carbon footprint? All of that data. What I'll tell you is, anecdotally, I have a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old. And if you've been to these events, I talk about my girls all the time. And they're very sustainably aware. And they expect to pick up their phone, scan the back of the package and know what it's made out of, where it came from, what was the farmer's name, was the cow treated humanely, and they just expect it's there. Now, they still make a choice whether based on price and other things, whether they want to buy it, but they want the data at their fingertips, and they don't understand why it's not, and they're a little suspect. Although I would love to say my children are unique and fabulous and all that kind of thing, I think that's pretty indicative of their generation. So, as we spoke about before, yes, they have publicly stated goals, so 26% do. And then the question was, do you have public deadlines? And if you have deadlines, what are the deadlines for the packaging? So you see the numbers there, so it's not a huge number. These are mostly retailers. And it kind of fits there. 3 of them were at 2024, 8 of them were at 2025. 2025 and 2030, when you look across the industries, there's a lot of people making big statements about it. Some of them are backpedaling at this point on some of those things because, again, they can't quite figure out how to get it all done, but I'd rather you have a goal. So then we said, what are your challenges? What are you afraid of? What do you think is going to slow you down? So the biggest sustainability challenges for retailer-owned brands as a whole. So number one there, sustainable materials and ingredients availability. 71.4% of the people, and these are manufacturers and retailers, are worried that they could meet the goals because the stuff just doesn't exist, right? Number two, implementing changes across the value chain. 67.3%. And number three, collaborating with suppliers, 55.1%. Now, what was interesting in the verbatims here was retailers understand they have built a culture of procurement and that culture is not necessarily good for collaboration. At the same time, they also understand they don't want to collaborate on sugar by the pound. Okay, so not all categories are equal. So you got to figure out where you're playing in the mix, right? 44.9% said they were concerned about consumer indifference, and 42.9% said they were concerned about the complexities in gathering data. There's a couple of software data guys in here. Trevor's taking notes. I can help him with that, right, Trevor? When we looked at the two different things, so we asked manufacturing versus packaging. So it's a product versus packaging question. You can see they're similar. So on the product side, the manufacturing side, it was supply chain, data traceability, water consumption. Obviously, retailers aren't going to have that concern as much. You're missing the O out of CO2 reduction there, and then food waste. So I know there's some retailers here working on food waste a lot. We had actually invited the, what's the name of the organization, Morgan, the upcycle food folks, and they couldn't make it, maybe next year. On the packaging side, it's recyclability, sustainable materials, plastic usage, supply chain, and data traceability. You see supply chain and data traceability hitting on both sides. Not a huge surprise. So as I said, it's a baseline. Pretty much it's a C, pretty much. We all know this is the first days of actual sustainability for the retailer-owned brand industry that we're trying to take. It's not a huge surprise. And we're going to do better, right? We're going to all work to do this. So the takeaways. You can do both things. You can take one step, make one thing a little bit better, and that's a perfectly great way to do it. Kroger redesigned a milk gallon a couple of years ago, took 2% of plastic out and saved hundreds of thousands of tons of plastic. There's a way to make little changes have an impact. You can also do the moonshot. You can say, we have a big, fat, hairy goal of X, and proclaim it out there. And honestly, you should be doing both. And those will be unique for each manufacturer, each retailer, doesn't matter. Number two, you can stop assuming you know what your consumers think or your boss thinks or anybody else about sustainability and start doing the hard work to actually figure it out and start doing the hard work to lead. And leadership is the challenge. Number three, data transparency. We have lived in a world of private brand where everything was a secret. Every manufacturer, every ingredient, everything was a secret. And we were all selling the same thing for most people, right? That day is either over or it will be over very, very soon. And data transparency can be a valuable tool in your arsenal. Number four, we can collaborate. And we went through this a lot, right? A lot of collaboration with retailers and manufacturers. What I would say is, it can also be manufacturer to manufacturer. It can be retailer to retailer. There are entire categories where we could make better, smaller, faster if we just had smart questions. Why is the cereal box 2 inches too tall? Right? It's my pet peeve. Can I get anybody to change it? No, but I'm going to keep trying. But it's that piece of, oh, we can't change it. We'll have to wait for the national brand to change it. No. Private brand as an industry at most retailers is 28 to 30%. We are the biggest brand in the room. We can lead if we choose to, and this would be a great place to lead. Is it easy? No. Will you have to communicate the heck out of it with your customer? Absolutely. If the cereal box got shorter, there better be signs and emails and the whole 9 yards telling people why it is. But we could do it. We have to have top-down alignment. Right, that was that sort of dull buzz in the middle of, does everybody know what the goals are thing? And are they telling everybody? And finally, we have to innovate. It's easy to take the same pack as everybody else has. It's easy to use the same recipe as everybody else has. It takes more time to innovate. It truly, truly does, but you will get more value out of it. Your customers will see what you're doing and they will reward you for it. It's exciting. So the call to action, lead, not follow. It's time. You have permission to lead. And my phrase is always be bold. It's time for us to be bold, and sustainability is a great place to start doing it.